he's going to continue this behaviour. And this behaviour with this online cheating, the secret texting, he did it multiple times on you. So it's like an addiction.
As an ex-addict herself, maybe Sophie's mum knows this better than most. There's just something about the way that Rob's been uncontrollably online cheating that screams addiction to her. So if that is indeed the case, what impact will this have on Sophie and Rob's already turbulent marriage?
I don't know whether or not my mum is right about him having a porn addiction or whether he's just a dick that likes to watch a lot of porn. I do want to give Rob the benefit of the doubt.
It's not even that Sophie wants. It's more like she can't help but give Rob the benefit of the doubt. But before we dive into all of this, let's just start at the beginning. So the last we saw these two, they'd just met up after 2.5 months apart. But the meeting soon descended into an argument. Sadly, nothing much has really changed with Rob. He still can't take accountability. And as far as Sophie's concerned, his half-assed apologies just aren't enough.
I met up with Sophie tonight, hoping that she would come home with me and that we could start getting our marriage back on track. But once again, I'm watching her walk out and walk a whole different direction from me.
Now, in Rob's mind, his goal was to try and get Sophie to move back in with him. That way, they could work on their problems together, like a married couple. But the thing is, for Sophie, she doesn't want to move back in with Rob until he fixes his problems, until he can take responsibility. So that means already these two are on totally different wavelengths. And that leads to Rob feeling very pissed off.
Even if we have problems, she should be at home working on these problems with me. We should be finding ways to get over them. We're married.
Now, Rob's perspective is that if Sophie's not physically present, how can they work on their problems? But what he's failing to understand here is his nature, the way that he manipulates or gaslights Sophie, has been wearing her down. She doesn't have the energy, she doesn't have what it takes to live with him anymore. At least not until he promises to change. Like, there's no doubting that Sophie really loves Rob and she wants to be with him. She will forgive him, but she just really wants him to own up to his mistakes and try and fix his ways. Promise not to do it again for like the millionth time. That's why she's putting her foot down this time. Only Rob doesn't see it that way.
Like, I actually look at the sanctity of marriage. I care about making it work. I care about doing everything that we possibly can to make it work.
Do you, Rob? Do you really? Like, do you really care about the sanctity of marriage when you're talking to other women behind Sophie's back? How much were you thinking about that when you were gladly encouraging and accepting pornographic videos from these women? The sheer audacity of the guy to claim the sanctity of marriage as if it means something to him. Thank God Sophie didn't hear him say that, because she's angry now, but I bet that would have made her furious.
I don't want to move in because like he's pressuring me to move in. Like, I want to move in because I generally feel this marriage is going to work. He just wants me to go home and that's it.
In the same way that Rob doesn't understand her motives for staying away, Sophie doesn't seem to understand Rob's motives. She's right, his goal for tonight was to try and get her to come home, because in his mind, that's the first step to fixing what they have. But the way he went about that, it came across like he wasn't taking accountability for his actions. Almost like he just wants to brush it under the carpet and get on with it.
Just accept that he doesn't treat me how I want to be treated, accept that he messed up my trust, accept that he hurt me. How are you gonna like hurt someone and just be like, well, don't hurt?
Rob is literally that guy. The guy that cheats and says, I said sorry, what else do you want me to do? Like, that's just not good enough. He doesn't seem to understand that forgiveness and trust will come back, but only if he shows it through his actions. Like, he just seems to want Sophie to forgive him because they're married. Because somehow in his mind, that's what she should do as his wife.
I just thought in my head like he would just show up and just be like this really great guy again and be how he used to be. I know he wants to work things out and I'm glad, but I don't know if I want to.
That, Sophie, is very much on you at this point. Rob hasn't exactly shown an ability to change his ways in the past, has he? So, yeah, that's a bit optimistic for now. But as for the man of the hour, he's sadly gone home by himself. Oh wait, hold on. No, he's not by himself. Rob is, of course, with his 8 tarantulas, and he begins to hilariously wallow in self-pity as he pulls out the wedding ring that Sophie lost and sits on the bed reflecting.
How do you lose your own wedding band? That's the end of the story. Like, how do you lose your own wedding band? If she cared about it, she would keep it safe.
Again, what Rob is doing here is finding reasons to blame Sophie for why their marriage is falling apart. Like, people do lose their wedding rings. It's a fact of life, unfortunately. It's not necessarily a reflection of how invested they are. But you know what is, Rob? Cheating. Yeah. Cheating. If you cared about your marriage so much, you wouldn't have cheated. That is a lot bigger issue than losing a ring, I'm afraid. And when we join Sophie the next morning, she's off to meet her mum at a bookstore, of all places.
My mum's in town visiting her boyfriend, so we're meeting up. I don't really know why she chose a bookstore because I've literally never seen her read a book in my life.
So after some small talk about the bookstore, where Sophie's mum pretends that she's interested in the books, Claire then reveals that she has some big news to share. Her boyfriend John that we met last week has apparently now told her that he loves her for the very first time.
John the other night said the L word.
Claire says this makes her feel really giddy. This is why she's wearing a flowery dress today, to come and tell Sophie the exciting news. But the news just makes Sophie feel a bit
I am happy to see my mum in love and everything's going really well in her relationship. It is also just kind of ironic, like she has this amazing relationship that's going well and my marriage is basically failing.
Sophie puts aside her own feelings of sadness to tell her mum that she's really happy for her. She agrees with her mum. She almost plays along with her. Sophie agrees that Claire's new boyfriend, who, remember, Sophie herself has only just met one time, seems like a great bloke. Like, what else can she really say? But the conversation then turns to Sophie's relationship problems. Now, we already know that Claire has absolutely nothing nice to say about Rob, ever. So if Sophie's looking for someone to make her feel better, then it won't be her mum.
I think Rob was a knob, shouting and going around in circles in arguments that made no sense. Gaslighting.
Literally, the exact thing. It was nice to see him at first, and I was really happy when he walked in, and he was happy to see me.
Sophie debriefs her mum about what happened with Rob the night before. She explains that they began arguing pretty much immediately. They were just going round and round in circles, and she tells her mum Rob simply didn't understand why she moved out. But then she reveals that she is going to give it one last go with Rob. In fact, she's agreed to meet him again tonight.
Even though things ended really badly last night and I stormed off, Rob reached out to me this morning asking if I can have a chat with him about moving back in. It's very confusing for me.
Now, Sophie explains that she feels the chat will probably be pointless because of how badly they left things last night. And she's probably right. It will most likely be pointless because nothing's changed from last night. Like, Sophie still doesn't want to go home and Rob doesn't want to focus on fixing anything until she comes home. They're at a dead end. Like, how do you take it forward from there? And Claire doesn't seem to have any confidence.
I mean, it might go well, though.
No, it won't.
It might.
It won't.
You never know.
It won't.
Well, I mean, we'll see. Like, you don't know, I don't know.
I do.
No, you don't.
Claire's seen how Rob treats Sophie, so she's not interested in seeing it happen again. She's said in no unclear terms, I do not want you with Rob. Yet she's repeatedly watched her daughter keep going back. So yeah, while it is a very different approach, mother and daughter are clearly very different in how they handle each other's feelings. The truth is, Claire doesn't really care about hurting Sophie's feelings. She's blunt because ultimately she's Sophie's mother first before she's Sophie's friend. And she really doesn't want to see her little girl get hurt again.
I did tell you he can't change. He's an arse.
Maybe he can reflect on his actions, I don't know. I just feel
You're talking about Rob,
that's
right?
why I'm trying to, I just want him to do that.
I just want him to reflect, says Sophie, who sounds very much like a broken record. The thing is, Sophie, you've given him 2.5 months to reflect, and clearly it hasn't worked, based on last night. But Sophie just can't seem to walk away. She can't help herself from going back to Rob, thinking that he'll be able to change for her. Sadly, at this point, that's starting to say a lot more about her than it is about him.
She likes to help everyone and she likes to think that she can change people. And like with Rob, she's like, she cares about him. So she wants to fix him.
Sophie's need to fix situations probably comes from her upbringing, probably comes from being raised in a house with an addict. Like watching mum and daughter here, it's clear that Sophie's relationship with Claire is sweet, but it's also very complicated. Like even today at the bookshop, we've seen firsthand how Sophie can often feel like the adult and Claire like the child. Like earlier when she was twirling her dress and telling her daughter that her boyfriend has said the L word. It's strikingly obvious that Sophie obviously had to grow up very quickly.
The whole time growing up, she wasn't clean. You know, she's like overdosed before, and I've had to like basically save her life.
I mean, that is a position that no child should have to be in. No child should have to save their parents' lives from an overdose. I mean, that must be horrific. But it does reiterate the fact that Sophie was raised her whole life to be a carer. That is probably why, no matter what Rob puts her through, she keeps going back. She feels this intrinsic desire to help him, to fix him, like she did for her mum during the most formative parts of her youth. It's a very real reminder that a person's upbringing will impact them for the rest of their lives. But if there's a silver lining to be had from that experience, it's that her mum is uniquely qualified to talk about addiction. So maybe when she talks, Sophie should listen.
He's going to continue this behaviour. And this behaviour with this online cheating, the secret texting, they did it multiple times on you. So it's like an addiction.
Coming from an ex-addict, this is interesting. Claire sees red flags in Rob's behaviour that has her thinking his issues, his behaviour, the fact that he's stuck in this cycle, repeatedly making the same mistakes, repeatedly soliciting videos from women online, could be motivated by something a little darker. So might she be right here? Could this actually be an addiction that Rob's struggling with? Or is this just a new tactic by Claire to try and get Sophie to split up with him?
I don't know whether or not my mum is right about him having a porn addiction or whether he's just a dick that likes to watch a lot of porn. I do want to give Rob the benefit of the doubt.
If it is addiction, what will that actually mean for Sophie? Like, will she want to remove herself from that and not repeat what she's seen in the past? Or will it cater to that nurturing, fixing part of her personality and cause her to go running back because it's something she knows all too well? It's almost ironic that Claire pointing this out might in fact be pushing Sophie back into Rob's arms. After all, she's done it before. She knows that addiction can be fixed. Just look at her mum, for example. So if Rob is addicted to porn, then is Sophie addicted to fixing him? Well, whatever the truth, however inclined Sophie is to give Rob the benefit of the doubt, she also can't look past the fact that this might just be Rob's personality. Like, it might not be addiction, it might just be Rob.
But in order for me to trust him again and have this loving marriage, he needs to change.
I would love you to be happy and have this like happy ever after with him, but I think you're just wasting your time.
So Sophie needs Rob to change, but Rob doesn't seem to have the capacity to change. Now, whether or not addiction plays a role in this, what's obvious is it really doesn't feel like these two are going anywhere on their own. They're just gonna keep going round and round in circles. And I, for one, am already feeling dizzy enough from all of this.